traveled a really long way, and I know a lot of you are here for that. But we're also here for one of our local writers, Brian McAuley, who has written an excellent novel as well. So we're really lucky to have both of them. Just to introduce myself real quick, my name's Pat King. I'm the science fiction, fantasy, and horror selector here at the store. Big fan of both of these writers, and I think you guys are in for a real treat tonight. Just to let you guys know, towards the end of the month, we'll have John Scalzi here. He'll be here. And then in October, September 15th. And we've also got Brian Asman and Philip Fracassi on their way. So if I could get everybody to hold up their book, hold it high, whichever book you bought, hold it high. And let's bring out the authors, Darcey Coates and Brian McAuley. All right. And I'm going to get out of camera focus because you guys really are here for the author tonight. The authors here tonight. I've got to say, what a delight, guys. Thank you so much for making the trek out here. Darcey, thank you for traveling all the way from Australia. Brian from Tempe.
Mesa.
Ooh.
The distant land of Mesa, Arizona.
Well, that's a good 30 miles away, depending on
Mesa's
how far
a very
east.
large city.
Exactly. Very slow, too. My mom lives there. I go there pretty frequently. And I'm like, the valley is just huge, Darcey. I mean, it's just crazy. So we're really lucky to have both of you tonight because you guys are both, I wouldn't say new faces of horror. I mean, Darcey, you've written dozens of books now. And Brian, this is book number 2 for you, right? Candy Cane Kills was the first one?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, Curse of the Reaper, Candy Cane Kills. Candy Cane Kills again, the second slaying, which I guess you missed, Patrick.
I did. I can't keep track of them all, unfortunately. And Darcey, tell us about you've written a lot of different books. So can you give us a little bit of an idea of what you've been writing and, your current book, but also your backlist a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really, really lucky to just be able to write, which is kind of a little bit of my break from the world, if that makes sense. So I've been very fortunate there. A lot of my books are kind of on the more gothic, spooky side, so you might see ghosts pop up a fair bit. Every time I'm deciding on what I'm going to write next, I say, you've done too many ghosts, no more ghosts, pick something different, and then I write a ghost story. But you'll see some themes pop up in my books again and again. Themes of isolation, being stranded somewhere where it's just you. You cannot even reach someone to come and help you. Themes of, struggling, I guess is the word I'd use, where I love the kind of story where the main character is up against something really, really horrendous, but they do not give up. They keep fighting. And those are the characters I love writing about the most, so you'll see that a bit as well. And this latest book is slightly different to the ghost stories. No ghosts in this one. Spoiler, I'm so sorry. But this is set on a... if anyone can't hear me as well, just please wave at me. I can't tell how loud I am.
You're pretty loud. We've got it cranked up pretty good.
Perfect.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you. This one's set on an island, and it's an island festival, so it's kind of, I really wanted to go for the juxtaposition of something that would be called paradise, something so beautiful and fun and exciting. You're there with your friends, you're there with your favorite influencer who's paid for your tickets there, and then turn it into the worst weekend imaginable. It is Firefest all over again, but just slightly worse.
Both of you've got a good body count in your books.
That's fair to say.
and I'm okay with the Fire Festival folks getting a little bit mangled. So I'm good with that. And Brian, tell us a little bit about your books, your work. I know that you've also done film, and you've written, like you said, your 4 novels, and then this one is a really interesting getaway novel as well.
Yeah. Never go on vacation with Darcey and I is the lesson that you will learn tonight. Yeah, so I've worked in film and TV for many years as a WGA screenwriter. I've written a bunch of Lifetime original movie thrillers, so all those movies about devious nannies. I've written several of them. Also wrote for Fuller House for Netflix and other things, and switched gears to write novels with my debut Curse of the Reaper in 2022, which is about a horror film actor who becomes haunted by the character that he played as they reboot his franchise and kick him to the curb. So it was kind of my meta Hollywood channeling all of my disillusionment with the industry into a murderous book. And then, yes, a duology of Christmas slashers. So all of my books are kind of in that slasher vein of one-by-one characters falling prey to very creative killers. Because, yeah, I'm a big fan of sort of the Final Destination influence of very elaborate death set pieces. And in this case, they take place at a spiritual healing retreat. So it's about a character, Hannah, who has lost her fiance a year ago and is not doing great in the wake of that. And her friends take her to this really remote retreat in Joshua Tree where they unplug and unwind with yoga and sound baths. And unfortunately, there's someone or something out there that is intent on killing her vibe for good.
Both of your characters are survivors, and that's one of the things that's really interesting about your novels. So I was wondering, is it some? And I'm not spoiling anything. We've got survivorship in the first chapters of both of their books, so I didn't want to be like, oh, they live or they. You don't know that. I'm just really curious, what was the impetus, Darcey and then Brian, in terms of creating survivors and bringing in, Darcey, you mentioned just previously that most of your characters are fighters, that they're regular people, but dig deep.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And in this book, it's Ruth, who is the survivor of an infamous suicide cult, the sole survivor, and she was a child when it happened. And so the courts essentially sealed the details about her identity, so she's been able to live anonymously. And coming to this island is her attempting to have a normal life, but also in a very wary way, because this island is full of influences. It's full of true crime enthusiasts who run podcasts, who know everything about the cult she grew up in, because they do, and who would love to know who this child is. And so it is a bit of a risky gamble for Ruth coming to this island, and I won't spoil it for you, but things do not go great.
I think it's in the title.
Things do go bad. I will let you guys know that tonight. They do not turn out happy. And Brian, for you?
Yeah. I mean, to spoil page one, we meet Hannah in the snowy wilderness of Northern California, dragging her fiance's dead body by a rope, trying to survive and get out. We don't know what exactly happened, and that's one of the mysteries of the book. But that was kind of the goal, was to start with a character who already has this deep trauma and to send her to a place that is supposed to help resolve that. But unfortunately, it just creates a whole lot more. And that, for me, is why I love the horror genre, is that it's all about facing demons, and it teaches us how to survive in the real world. And I think these kinds of characters who are survivors show us how you can get through these things and survive. Maybe. We don't know who survives in the end of the books.
Well, Hannah's really interesting because she's coping through a variety of different ways. And so is Ruth. Can you kind of describe how both of your characters sort of coped with their predicaments, the things that they've gone through, the things that have haunted them?
Yeah, in the case of Hannah, she is in therapy, but she's also leaning heavily and abusing the prescription medication that she's on, because she's actually having haunting visions of her dead fiance, like traumatic hallucinations that are also impacting her at work, where she's a medical intern, and she's been pushing her friends away, which is part of the plot, as well as the idea that her solution is to isolate, to medicate, to throw herself into work, and to just not really have a full life. And that's not working great, it turns out. And so that's part of this narrative as well, is the friends who are trying to pull her back into the fold and take her on this getaway to reconnect everybody to try to actually heal.
Yeah, and Ruth is, her whole thing is walls. She's got so many walls up to try and protect herself. Her whole goal is to get through life without being noticed, essentially, because she kind of has this awareness that if her identity is found, she will never know a normal life again. There is nowhere she can move where she will not be recognized, where people will not take photos of her and share her location, essentially. And so Ruth's whole goal is to live the most mundane life imaginable. If nothing exciting ever happens to her again, that will be a good life for her. But at the same time, with the arrival at this island, she starts having visions that were a big element of the cult she grew up in, that she no longer believes are real, that they are not visions of the future, they're maybe hallucinations, maybe things left over from the trauma from her childhood, and she's trying very hard to ignore them. And again, it does not go well.
Things go south pretty quickly.
They
You know, one of the things I was really interested in about your book, Darcey, was the fact that you're giving us kind of a very modern perspective on the horror and modern media. I think that YouTube and YouTube stars and influencers have sort of surpassed some of the Hollywood stars in their popularity and in their and this character Eaton, who's one of your main characters, he's a lot like Mr. Beast, right?
Yeah.
And then you combine that with the Fire Festival, so the Beast Games meets Fire Festival. What was it about those two subjects that sort of grabbed you?
Oh yeah, I've always been fascinated by influencers because to be a successful influencer in the modern world, whether that's a YouTuber or an Instagrammer, you need to feel authentic. People need to feel like they're seeing the real you there, that you could be sitting down at the table with them and chatting to them. But in order to do that, you have to be very calculated in what you put out there. You have to be curating this version of yourself. And so it's sort of this opposite of appearing to be very, very authentic and very real while being very deliberate about how you do it. And I do have a memory of an Instagram star, that's not the right word, influencer, who was a travel influencer, and she would stay at these beautiful exotic locations, and she was just talking about what a workday would be like for her. She would wake up at this resort and she would start from maybe 8 a.m. taking photos, doing this, securing her next sponsorship. And she had a cold through this whole vacation and she felt ghastly, but she still had to look immaculate and happy and calm and relaxed in all of her photos because that was the fantasy she was selling. And it was kind of those vibes I really wanted to channel through the book. And you picked up on Mr. Beast. It is that kind of effect of someone who is not a traditional celebrity, not a movie star, but is perhaps even more famous, especially among certain generations, than traditional movie stars.
Yeah, I got a little hooked onto the Mr. Beast games during last summer, and so I'm like, oh yeah, you're creating some games here. We've got some challenges, but maybe some of those challenges won't be so good on a private island, you know? And for Brian, for you, I mean, why Joshua Tree? I find it a very creepy place to begin with. So can you give us a little bit of a perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, the characters start out in Los Angeles, which is where I lived for a decade, and that's where I really encountered so much of the wellness culture that I kind of skewer a bit in this book. And so it felt organic to have these characters coming from LA where you do encounter so much of that. But then the place that people go for vacations from LA, Joshua Tree, is like about a 2-hour drive, and it's where a lot of LA folks are like going and buying and building homes or setting up their crystal shops, and it's very much kind of all of that culture. It's kind of like the Sedona of LA in that regard, in terms of like that focus on spirituality and kind of the capitalist aspect of it. And so for me, it was a very organic location to set it, and also because it is ultimately just a vast desert out there. When you go out there, it is barren. And I also, once I learned that there was also this long history of gold mining there, and there are all these old abandoned mine shafts, I was like, well, that's let's dig into that and find a slasher figure to crawl out of the shadows of that history. And it felt like a nice juxtaposition. And also just the desert, as preaching to the choir here, but the desert's just always trying to kill you. So you barely even need a slasher in the mix when you've got the sun and snakes and all the other fun stuff out there.
You know, I've got a day job, and I was explaining to somebody from Pennsylvania, I said, Arizona's a lot like Australia in terms of we have everything that wants to kill you here.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, you know, from the spiders to the snakes to everything else, you know, the Pennsylvania just got possums, you know? Bears, you know? We got spiders, we got rattlesnakes, we got some fun stuff. You've got even worse, Darcey. I mean...
Sometimes I really loved arriving here, though, because there were some Australian feelings, but then so different. And the person who was driving me in, I just wouldn't leave them alone. I kept saying, there's a mountain over there. Like, everything is so flat, and then there's just this tiny mountain, the size of a 3-story house. I'm like, whoa. So that was very fun.
I used to be under the ocean, so, you know. Way back. I don't remember those days too well. So Brian, what's the element of the slasher that you really enjoy? And Darcey, I wouldn't call this a slasher novel, but I mean you get some pretty gruesome deaths too. So I'm really curious with this one. What did you inspire? Just the death cults, you think? The fire festival?
Yes, a lot of that. Cults, especially. That was kind of a bit of a fascination that I just wanted to explore in this book. So much of my books are just me having feelings about something and not knowing what those feelings are and just wanting to work through them in a novel. So, the cults and the influences and especially this effect of Ruth's anxieties around being found kind of, I guess, mimic what the internet can do to us sometimes. The idea that if something about you goes out on the internet, it's kind of there forever, and you may not be able to change the public's opinion of you. And that's kind of where Ruth's at, that the cult is so famous that people have started taking the very horrifying history and trying to make it worse, trying to add rumours on top of it, trying to make it more salacious, and including rumours about Ruth herself. So, it's... does that answer your question at all? I think I went on a tangent.
You did. No, you did. Absolutely. And that's part of what's so interesting. Cults are I mean, what's the best way? We have so many true crime programs, right? And we try to make them a little bit more salacious, sensational, and you forget about the survivors, those people who didn't make it out, or those who didn't make it out, you know? And yet we love them. We love true crime shows. We love cult shows. I mean, Saturday night, not doing anything, pajamas, popcorn, cult show.
Yes.
And Brian, what about the slasher? What was it that intrigues you with that?
I think, and I have an author's note in the book kind of talking about the inspiration for the book, but also my history with the genre. And when I was 10 years old watching Scream for the first time, and it just like rewired my brain. Because it was so fun and funny and also scary. And I loved like the mix of teen drama with the threat of this ghost face figure and also the Agatha Christie style murder mystery 1-by-1 elements. Like I was just like, this has everything I could ever want in a movie. So that, especially for this book, was like the primary influence, were those 90s and early aughts type of slashers that were really about a whodunit, but also with kind of creative kill set pieces, as I mentioned. Like for me, that's just, it's not in the vein of like a cruel murder, but rather like it's so over the top that it's actually, there's like a slapstick element to the type of kill scenes that, as I mentioned, like Final Destination has an influence where you're gasping and gagging and giggling all at the same time is my goal. And I think that's what's so fun about what a slasher can be, is just like all of those experiences rolled into one. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of this scene. Was it Sarah Michelle Gellar that got crushed in the garage door?
No, that was Rose McGowan.
Rose
Yes.
McGowan, that's right. Okay.
Tatum.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was a hard death
Keith
scene.
Tatum. Yeah. And that specifically is the scene I referenced in my author's note, because it was just that whole, like, you see the doggy door and you're like, oh, she's going to get out. And it's like, wait, she's trapped. Oh, no, he's pushing the button. And then it defies physics. It makes no sense. But again, that's why it's like fun, because you're like, okay, it could never happen, but it's creative.
It is, and it does harken back to those older mystery novels, you know. And then there were none. You talk about it in the back of the book quite a bit as an inspiration. And if you think about it, Agatha Christie was our first slasher novel.
Totally.
With And Then There Were None. It was just a lot more British and refined.
Yeah, I think I always say the biggest difference between like most like murder mystery thrillers and slashers is that in the murder mysteries, people are usually finding the dead bodies after the murder has been committed. And in slashers, it's like, we're going to watch this happen real slow and in detail. So it's just a slight adjustment. Yeah.
Exactly, and you get pretty graphic in a few scenes. I mean, it's pretty. Darcey, you're always a little bit tamer with your violence. Although there are some scenes in here that I've got to say are pretty gnarly, and you've got a dark side that I'm a little scared about, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I was writing this book. Like you said, most of my books are more on the eerie side, more than the violent side. This one, I kind of just went for it, and I kept asking myself, where is this coming from? But yeah, it was. It feels like a very cathartic book by the end of it. At least for me, I hope it is for you as well.
Do you feel like you're now drawn more towards some of the gnarly, gorier stuff? Doing more of that?
Potentially, I do love every corner of horror, so I kind of want to spend some time in just about every part of it. Some parts I do love a bit more, the ghost stories keep popping up, but I've gone not quite this far in some previous books, but Hunted also got a bit kind of rough with the decapitated heads on trees. But yeah, this takes it up half a step, so just a bit of a warning.
Where does both of your loves of horror come from, and what is it that you find so appealing for writing in that? And Darcey, you're doing 2 to 3 books a year, and I don't know how you do it, but you knock each one out of the park too. You keep that quality high. So I'm just really curious. What's your inspiration? What grabbed you?
Yeah, I just remember when I was young, if there was a TV show, it was always the spooky episode I loved the most. You know, that's young kids' TV shows. It was always the Halloween special, whatever it was, I remembered the most, I was the most drawn to. And then I think I was around 13. My parents let me watch Sixth Sense, and that was my moment. So that was my scream. And I think...
The ghosts.
Yeah, yes, that's where it started. And I think most horror authors have watched a movie and read a book probably a bit younger than they should have. It was Salem's Lot for me, age 10, but yeah. So I did not understand most of it. Is the mercy, but that's where it started for me, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, I mean, certainly like Goosebumps books were a gateway, scary stories to tell in the dark. Those illustrations are just still the most haunting things in the world. And Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon? Like, 90s kids had just a gold mine of horror for kids that was just held nothing back. And it was a great time to grow up. And I had an older brother who like handed me a VHS of The Evil Dead when I was way too young, and I was just like, what? But yeah, I love the Halloween episodes. I just remembered like Boy Meets World had a Halloween episode where someone gets like a pencil through the head, and it's just like more of those episodes.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and I think the other part of the question of the why this, like the genre for me, like horror genre allows you to shine a light in the corners of that society does not want to talk about. And that's what I love about it. It's like saying you want to repress and oppress these people or these ideas or these realities. And horror is like, nope, that's exactly where we're going to go. And we're going to put a magnifying glass up to it and magnify it up to monstrous proportions and reckon with it. And that's why I think there's like it's such like a brave genre in that regard. And all the people that I've met in the genre are like the sweetest people you'll meet, because we're working through it. We're facing our demons.
I've heard the guy from Terrifier, the one who plays the Terrifier, is actually a very nice person.
Yep.
God, that movie, I could only get through about 10 minutes of it, and I was like, oh, that one's a little bit too much for me. It was terrifying. It was very terrifying. It's nom de plume. What is it about the... so we've talked a little bit about the slashers and movies that inspire us. Who are some of the authors that inspire you?
So many. I always blank out whenever I'm asked. And I have so many. I mean, I was here recently with Nat Cassidy, who is one of my favorite modern horror authors. Clay McLeod Chapman is another one. Chuck Tingle, if you're not reading Chuck Tingle, my God. He was just in Mesa doing an incredible book tour that puts every other book tour I've ever seen to shame, because he does a full performance. Yeah, I think I could go on, but I'll think about more as you talk.
Oh yeah, it's like you get asked that question and your mind goes blank. Yeah. I have never read a book in my life. but for me, C.J. Tudor, I love. Nat Cassidy, like you said, Chuck Tingle, you picked some great ones. And it's the classic answer, I'm sorry, but Stephen King, going way back to actually his book on writing, that was the book that made me realize I could do this as well. I learned how to edit from that book. Before that, I thought editing was you just change stuff. You don't know why you're changing it. You're just changing it. And I realized when he had an example of how he edited in that book, and it was like, oh, you only change things when they're bad. There's no minimum requirement of what to change per page. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to meet a quota. So.
Now, you're very prolific. And how do you manage to do 2 to 3 books a year? Are you, you must be filled with ideas. I mean, or a notebook that has some sentences or something that keeps you going.
I am a tiny bit obsessive. I do love writing horror. I think, like I said, it's kind of actually almost a reprieve from the rest of life, which is great, because when horror gets a bit too much, I can go back to regular life, and when regular life gets a bit too much. But I have always loved consuming horror, and with that love of consuming is a desire to put out my own stories as well. And so many of my books are just me saying, I cannot find this exact story I want to read, so I'm going to make it. I'm so annoyed this does not exist. So, and yeah, it's 2 to 3 books kind of does sound like a lot, and I guess it is a lot, but some days I feel very, very slow, because I have a folder of ideas, and that folder is getting longer than I can work through it, so.
That's a good problem to have. For a lot of writers wish they could,
Oh, yeah.
And Brian, how about you? I mean, you're doing about a book a year now. You said you're about 2 books ahead of this one.
Yeah, I don't like to pause, because I just feel that, like you were describing, like at this point when you've written so much, like it becomes such a cathartic experience. To me, it like keeps me sane to do that work every day. And I teach at ASU as a screenwriting professor, and so like it's such a privilege that every day for me is filled with storytelling. Like I literally just finished a class. It ended at 5:45, and I was working with students on their TV series pitch ideas, and like doing a workshop with all of their creativity, and then running here to talk about books. And it's just like, cool, I'm going to wake up early tomorrow and write on the plane to my next event, because it just brings so much joy. And like, there's kind of the craftsmanship side, I think, is part of it, of just the joy of piecing things together and connecting dots, and totally relate to the just wanting to write the books you haven't seen yet. And there's a Jordan Peele quote about that I share with my students too. He says that, of like, write the movie that you want to see. That's the only thing that's gonna get you through the process. Because this is the other thing, is these final books how many times have we read and rewritten and gone from front to back through them? Like, you better have a lot of gas in that tank and a lot of fuel in that fire when you start with an idea, because it's got to get you very far through this process.
both of you, I mean, with the Darcey, with the total number of books that you've written, and Brian, with just write, you're both used to writing under pressure. I think you learned how to do that as working and writing screenplays. I'm sure. I mean, it's quite the challenge. So, how much of a challenge is it to write towards that goal of a book or 2 books or 3 books a year, Darcey, in your case, which is pretty awesome? I mean, how do you manage to get through all of everything? Because you said you're primarily an editor when it comes down to it.
Yeah. I've actually renegotiated with my publisher. I send them the books when they're ready, and then they schedule them. Because for a few years now, it has been deadlines and finishing the book to meet a deadline, and that is a challenge. It it really makes you work. But I did find that, especially with this book, this was the first book where I had to extend my deadlines, not just once but multiple times. This book was kind of the most complex to work on in that it took the most editing. The ending was rewritten about 3 or 4 times. A whole subplot was taken out. It's for the better, don't worry, you're not missing anything. And a new subplot was added. So, most of my books, I have a really clear idea of what I want them to be before I start them, and so then it's just a case of trying to get them on the page as accurately to what I imagine as possible. This is the first book I've had to do so much reworking on. I think it was really, really worth it at the end. I think, and I hope you'll find that as well. I think it's made a much stronger book, but this was a rough one. So, at the moment, I've said to my publisher, yes, I'll send you the book when it's ready, and then we can set the deadline.
So, is Sourcebooks your Australian publisher as well as your American publisher?
That's it. Yeah, Sourcebooks has been great.
And Brian, how about you? I mean, you're used to writing in deadlines, but you're 3 books ahead now, or 2 books ahead.
Yeah, I'm working on the book after this one. Did I say that right? Because I'm very much from working the screenwriting world, as you mentioned. Like every contract I've ever gotten was like, okay, when you sign this, we're agreeing to outline gets delivered this date, first draft gets delivered this date, revision gets delivered this date. So I've been trained through that process to kind of, for one thing, outline. I'm very much a plotter, and I have all my students outline as well, because I tell them, like, well, I'm training you for the real world and this is the job. And even in the book world, like if you have a book deal and it's coming to an end, usually there's a contractual stipulation of like, we'll get to look at the next thing, and it's usually a few chapters and then an outline of the rest of the book, right? So being a plotter, for me at least, is kind of part of the process, and where I do most of the legwork of figuring all that stuff out. And then first draft is a little bit of pulling teeth, because it's like I'm trying not to judge every word I'm putting down and just know, like, it's the rough version, it's the rough version, it's the rough version. And then rewriting is like so much work, but also so much fun, because it's picking up on connections that I didn't realize I unconsciously planted. It's discovering depths of character that I hadn't planned in advance. And then it's getting to the point where you read a chapter and you're like, wait, that read like a book. That didn't read like a manuscript. That read like a book, like a book's arc. And that's my process, at least.
That's really cool. And you try to instill with your students to read books and to get used to, because within Hollywood, I mean, so many of our ideas right now are coming from novelists writing their books and then translating them into screenplay.
Yep, and that's something I'm always talking about, is like the sort of transmedia approach to storytelling, and thinking about, okay, you pitch me in a story idea. Is this a short story? Is this a novel? Is this a film? Is this a TV show? Like, and if you write it in one medium, how would you adapt it into another one? And certainly for me, like, I break my stories outline in the same way I would a feature-length script. So they have the structure and the pacing of a movie, and I get a lot of feedback from readers that, like, oh, that felt like I was watching a movie. And those are the kind of books that I tend to enjoy reading as well, is that the kind of pacey experience, but then with the depth of character that you can really only get from a novel, and that's the sweet spot. Yeah.
With both of you, and both of these books are villains. I don't want to get into too much detail. I'm going to actually skip that question. I don't want to spoil anything. Darcey, for you,
There are no villains in these books.
there's
All
no
good.
villains. Yes, we do know that there are. Otherwise, we'd have no conflict. It'd be like Animal Crossing. Darcey, I'm really curious because you do write a lot of kind of gothic horror as well. And so I've got to know, did you grow up in a haunted house?
I tragically did not. I did do a couple of ghost tours when I was younger, did not see anything exciting. It was a big letdown. But I have, when my last cat passed away, who I loved very, very dearly, she would always sleep on the end of my bed. And a couple of days after she did pass away, I felt her jump onto the end of my bed, and it was so convincing that I actually sat up to look for her, and she was not there. So that's my spooky story. It's
That's a great spooky story.
it's a really nice one because nothing's trying to kill me.
In fourth grade in Colorado, we lived in a house in Broomfield that, I mean, there was a lot of disembodied voices, things like that. It was freaky. So when I read your books, I'm like, I'm back there. I'm reliving trauma. And I've got to say that it's really, I love a good ghost story. And probably the book that most terrified me of yours was Dead of Winter, which was a great, great book. In terms of the ghost story, what is it that grabs you? What is it that you want to get out of that story itself?
I think I am kind of drawn to ghosts because they are this thing that is in some ways familiar. It is a human, and also completely unfamiliar. They are different to us. A ghost is not quite like a person, doesn't think, doesn't behave like a person you can speak to very often. I mean, there are different law around ghosts in different areas, different law around how you can stop them, but Salt or Ryan or anyway. But I think one thing I am drawn to is taking what is normal and familiar and changing it just slightly until it's not. And so haunted houses are that. A house is something we are so familiar with. For a lot of us, it's our sanctuary. We get off a difficult day of work and we go home and we say, thank goodness I'm home, as we put our slippers on. And so the idea of your house being haunted, it takes that away from you. Suddenly you do not have your sanctuary anymore. You do not have your reprieve. In fact, your reprieve is to get out of the house if you can, which they never do in movies. They never ever do. Blood dripping down the walls. Oh, it's just rust, darling. Don't worry about it. The house is old. It creaks.
And with you, Brian, most of your villains are very corporeal.
Yeah, I love playing with that line though of, like Curse of the Reaper. I kind of briefly pitched y'all, but the idea is that the question is whether or not this character that the actor played, like, is it a manifestation of his mind, or has he, through the craft of his work, brought an actual character into the real world somehow? And I love books that can play and walk on that line of the psychological and the supernatural, because, like, to me, that's the scariest question, just to not know, because if it feels real to a character, it feels real to you as the reader. That's all that really matters, because it's scary. But I do, I tend to. That's kind of why I think of like the slashers as so closer to thrillers sometimes, because they are usually more grounded and rooted in like my reality, which is that the scariest thing are people, and that's, I think, one of the most recent Scream films, the tagline was just, "It's always someone you know," and I was like, that's spot on terrifying.
And not to spoil Scream for anybody who has not seen the 1996 film by now. I mean, they were very human characters. Mm-hmm. And when it was a reveal, at that point in time, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah. Just a couple of high school goobers. And it's something that some people, man, I'm getting on my Scream soapbox. Some people criticize Scream because, like, Ghostface has some moments where, like, the pratfalls of, like, getting hit with the freezer door, like, falling down the stairs. But it's like, when you find out that it is just, like, these teenage boys, that, to me, that makes it all the scarier, because they're not, like, Frankenstein hulking Jason Voorhees. They're like, oh, no, these are just people. And, yeah, it's scary.
Although it's Friday the 13th is Voorhees, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. When you discover it's really the mother.
Yeah.
That's
We're
that's
just
the most
spoiling
terrifying.
all the slashers tonight.
I mean, come on. If you have not seen a 1979 Friday the 13th, either you're not going to, or you're just past spoiler territory by now.
Norman Bates.
Was also mother. So, Darcey, in terms of your favorite novel, I know that you probably How Bad Things Can Get is probably right now your current favorite, although probably really it's like the third book that you're writing right now that we don't know about. But do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite book of yours that you just sort of loved or you struggled through, and now that you're sort of glad that it's there in your library?
Oh, yeah. Usually when people ask what my favourite book is, I do say either the one I'm working on or the one I've most recently finished, because that's the one I've been most excited about. I usually try not to start working on a book unless it excites me more than anything else I've written before. Like, sometimes that's a bit hard to do, but I always try to do that. But books I've really been proud of are Gallows Hill. That was, I think, a very special book for me. Again, I don't want to spoil it for people, but yeah, there's a scene at the ending that I do really love. And the other one is Where He Can't Find You, which is classified as YA. I really pushed it for YA, so call it YA/adult. But that's a small town horror with a monster, the Stitcher, who, if you're out after dark, he could get you. And I really loved that story. That was a big challenge to write, but I was really proud of how it came out. So yeah, those are my two go-to.
And Brian, do you have a favorite book right now, or are you still kind of in that they're all your favorites?
I mean, definitely, yeah, it's hard to choose, but I definitely relate to that. Just like the most recent book is always feels like the favorite. But I will say, like, there was something special about Candy Cane Kills Again, the second slaying, because to have an opportunity as a fan of the horror genre to have a publisher come back and be like, hey, that book did really well. Do you want to write a sequel? Was like Randy and Scream. I was like, I know all the rules of how to approach this, and that unique challenge of, okay, we're returning to this world, we're returning to these characters, and I want to deliver more of the same, but also something totally different was something that to me only a sequel offers you that unique writing challenge. So to me that was a special experience.
Horror novels, you really don't get the chance to write too many sequels.
Yeah.
There's only a handful that I can think of, and even in film, I mean, we get a lot more in terms of that. But I loved Candy Cane Kills because it reminds me a lot of Black Christmas.
Yeah.
And nothing better than horror during Christmas, let me tell you.
Just-
Combine the two,
Yeah.
it's something magical, isn't it?
It's that whole thing of like, a healing retreat or a festival, like it's supposed to be happy, joyful, and then mix it up with the horror, and that contrast is such a delight for some of us. Presumably all you freaks that came out for this event.
Open a package, find a head. I mean, Darcey is very familiar with, decapitations, so, so for both of you, I mean, are you lucky enough to have any of your books being turned into film or optioned or anything like that yet? Hollywood?
Ryan, I feel like you might have the better odds of this.
But so Curse of the Reaper has been in it was optioned and has been in development for a couple of years with a wonderful filmmaker at a great studio, none of which I can talk about yet, which is the worst thing about, it's not the worst thing about Hollywood. Read Curse of the Reaper and find out what the worst thing about Hollywood is. But it's, and I, as someone who's come from film and TV, it's been really nice to be more hands-off with that experience of just like, I'm just going to focus on writing the next book and find the collaborators who I trust to bring it to life. But I did write the script adaptation for Candy Cane Kills and have met with some directors about it. But it's always, Hollywood's always a very slow process. Publishing sometimes feels as slow, but you can always just focus on writing the next thing. So that's what I try to do.
Exactly. And if any of Brian's students are here, they may or may not get extra credit. Probably not. just
No extra
completely lying and lying.
Unless you buy a book, then show me the receipt and we'll talk.
And we're online, so absolutely not. We're not doing that, ASU. Now comes the spastic part of the program where I'm going to run around with the microphone so the audience can ask questions. So get your questions ready for Darcey and Brian. And why don't you guys go ahead? Whoever has a question, raise your hand. I will get out of this chair and I will run over to you. And you're right in the front row, so that's easy.
Darcey, what is the thing that scares you the most?
Oh, everything. That's a great question. People sometimes think horror authors are super brave, super confident. I can't speak for anyone else, but I am not. Thunderstorms scare me. But the things that scare me the most, I do think isolation, which comes up a lot in my books, the idea of not being able to reach help, very badly needing help, and not being able to reach anyone. And also, a sense of the unknown, that there's something bad out there, but you don't know what it is. You just know it's out there, and you don't know how to deal with it, but it's getting worse. So, thank you.
Darcey, so I know you're really busy when you do your book tours. Did you have any chance to visit any of the US haunted locations?
I have not. It's been a
no.
tragedy. So the closest I got was Pittock Mansion in Portland. It was not haunted, but it was a historic house. So, which is almost as good.
I'm running to the back.
Question for each, one separate for each of you. Darcey, I love your work, and I'm curious to hear about how you choose your titles, or if that's a publisher thing, because you have so many books that are The Haunting of, The Haunting of, The Haunting of. So I'd be curious to hear about that. And then Brian, I would love to hear a little bit more about the practicality of your plotting. How do you deviate from that when do your characters surprise you? Do you plot out each chapter? Is it more of a broad overview, and how does that work?
Yeah. Do you want me to go first? A lot of my older books were actually self-published originally, so I did get to choose the titles. And as you can tell, I'm not necessarily the most creative with titles. So these days, it's a bit more of a collaboration with my publisher. If I send them a manuscript with the title they really love, it's easy. We just go ahead. Gallows Hill was one of those. And then sometimes I send them titles that they say, let's look at that again. So How Bad Things Can Get was actually something the publisher worked on me with. The first version was, I just called it The Island. When I was writing the manuscript, the title was The Island, which is not the best horror novel title. But originally we went for Uninhabited as a title, which I wasn't completely sold on, and my publisher, it turned out, wasn't completely sold on either. The island is not, it is uninhabited when they get there, but by the time the festival's happening, it's the opposite of uninhabited. And also, it was very awkward to fit on a cover. Like, you have no idea. They tried so many versions of the cover. So we settled on this, which really does have the vibes of the book.
The question about plotting, I usually, once I have the premise, I'll start with a cork board and index cards, because the first thing I want to know is like, what are the scenes that I have to have in this book, the set pieces that would be are usually murder set pieces. So I'm kind of plotting those and then thinking about the character journey through that. So I use those index cards to plot just like jotting a few words or a sentence on each index card until I have enough to know that I have the shape of the plot. And then I will write a scene-by-scene outline that's getting, with each book, they're getting longer and longer. My poor agent who reads them all. But I like to treat that as my first crack at like a rough draft without really feeling like the thread of the blank page. And then when I am drafting, the characters definitely reveal so much to me. It doesn't change the plot much usually. Little moments will change here and there. But I'm kind of a writer who, like, the plot tells me who the characters are. Like, the characters, it helps me narrow down the focus of who the characters are. And, you know, the prime example of like, okay, it's a slasher at a spiritual healing retreat. I know it's somebody who needs some serious healing and reverse engineer a character from that. But yeah, it's definitely a very kind of meticulous process, while also it gives me the courage to explore avenues that I might not think of in advance.
Hello. My sister and her husband are watching from Albuquerque, and they wanted to ask both of you, if you had to survive in one of your books, which do you think you'd have the best odds?
Not this one.
Not that was exactly what I was going to say. No way.
I would have to go for, it's a weird combination, but my cozy horror series, which is the Gravekeeper series. The ghosts do not come for you there. You have to go to the ghosts. So I would be fine. I would be living.
Yeah.
I'd be living my best life in a small town, drinking coffee. Kira would be up on the hill dealing with the ghosts. It's fine.
Yeah, I would definitely not survive this one because, like, I couldn't even survive the lack of air conditioning, frankly. I'd just be like, I give up, kill me. Candy Cane Kills is like, they're trapped in a snowbound cabin. I don't think, Candy Cane I could never defeat. The second one is in a church. The church has already done so much damage to me. I know I'm not surviving that. So Curse of the Reaper, because I did survive Hollywood somehow, and if it's less of a contained location, so.
Darcey, since you brought it up, I have to ask, will there be another Gravekeeper book? And if so, are there any teasers that you can give us?
Oh, thank you. You probably did notice that I left the last book in the series kind of open-ended. There is room for more. I don't have anything planned right now, but I have kind of had it bubbling in the back of my head. Maybe a collection of short stories. I feel like that would be a good next book for that.
So, Darcey, I thought Craven Manor was really creative, and I'm just wondering, without spoilers, I guess, what was your inspiration for that story?
Oh, great question. Let me think, because that was a while ago. Because once the book's written, you're so immersed in the story, you kind of forget where it started. Yeah. It's I knew I wanted it to be a very old house. I do love my old houses. We don't have quite enough of them in Australia. 1940s is like the average age of an old house around me, so it's not very exciting. But yes, I do remember now. Okay, the key that started the story was just the idea of receiving an invitation that you cannot really reject. An invitation that says, you need a job, here is a job, it's at a remote location, you'll be paid well, trust me, it's going to be fine. And the question of, do you trust it? You desperately need a job, but this location is very far out and very spooky, and you have not seen your employer yet. But yeah, that was the seed of it, that what would you do if you received that letter slid under your door?
Hi, I was wondering, do you do any kind of research to help you develop your books or to help you develop your characters? And what does that look like for both of you?
Yeah. I mean, in the case of this book, I definitely did a lot of research into the Joshua Tree history. I mentioned the gold mining history. There's also, because the book tackles cultural appropriation in the wellness industry, there's a lot of research into the indigenous history of Joshua Tree and the Chemehuevi tribe, and I read a lot about that and baked that into the story, and that was something I really wanted to make sure I got right. And other research, I think I can't remember for my other books if there was any extensive research, but no, because I kind of lived through all the other ones, but yeah.
Yeah, it helps me a lot that I usually really love the topics that I'm writing about, so I've already absorbed by osmosis a lot of the details. One story I put a lot of research into was From Below. That's the story about deep sea diving down to a shipwreck. I already knew some parts of deep sea diving because it fascinated me, and parts of shipwrecks because they fascinated me, but then there was so much research into getting everything right. How long it would take you to descend to that depth, what sort of equipment you'd need, how long you could last down there, just everything, all the tiny details. And in retrospect, someone else said to me when I was telling them about that, they said, it's a novel, you can make stuff up.
Yes.
that one is very, I'm not going to say perfectly scientifically accurate, but it was as close as I could get it, which, did
That-
not need to be, but...
That I'm just remembering because the book after this one that I've written is set in a foreign country where I lived for 3 or 4 months. So it was drawing from personal experience, but then it also delves into some of the ancient history of that place. So I read a very thick historical text that like inspired a lot of ideas. But then I think it's so important to recognize like I'm not writing a nonfiction book. I'm not even writing historical horror. So like I can fudge some of these details or combine ideas and make this kind of my own thing. And I think that's, yeah, I hope that's okay.
The novel police haven't come for us yet.
Right.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I love all your books, especially the ones where they have romance in it. I love when they get together, fight against all the creatures. My question is, will there be more of those?
Very likely. So, like I said, I kind of love every corner of horror, and I want to spend more time in just about every corner. And so I think you might be thinking of Voices in the Snow. That is a very, very weird genre mashup. I'm so lucky my publisher took it. It is gothic, romantic, apocalyptic. So, but I loved it, and I would very much like to write more books like that. Thank you.
We're just checking to see if there were any online questions. We've got some people from Australia and Italy watching, which is kind of cool.
Oh.
So you've got some hometown people. Any more questions? Yes, let me grab this.
Hi, this is for Darcey. I was wondering if any of the cats in your book were based off of inspiration of your own cats, either in look or personality.
Very, very much, yeah. I've always had cats my whole life, and they just end up in my books. So Daisy in the Gravekeeper series, she was a combination of 2 of my cats. The appearance of Jack, who is actually a very dignified cat. He's the gentleman of the house. He makes sure everyone follows the rules. And Sophie, who was the sweetest cat, you could just feel her straining to think. She had 2 brain cells, and they were trying to connect so hard. I loved her so much, so that was the personality of Daisy.
Animals are amazing, aren't they? The dumb ones are the best. Any other questions from the online audience? All right.
I was just curious what the answer to your stuff being made into movies, if that's been...
Oh, yeah, I didn't get to answer that. I don't have any exciting news right now. A few of my books have been optioned, and Brian will know this. The option is the first step, and it's a very, very shaky, small step. It's a studio saying, we want to consider this further, so we're going to take the rights to this so no one else can get it while we think about it. So fingers crossed. But Brian knows so much more about the industry than I do. I am kind of sitting at home waiting for an email telling me it's going to be a movie. So fingers crossed for one day. Thank you.
No, I'm constantly emailing my meteorites. I'm like, any updates? And they're like, yep, it's still moving forward. I'm like, cool. It means nothing.
For Darcey, are you allowed to say what books those are that are being optioned?
Oh, one was From Below, and I'm not sure if the option is still on that, because usually they're for a fixed amount of time, a few years, and then the studio can re-option it at the end of that. That was probably the one that has gotten furthest along. There was a studio pitch. They made a cool graphic for it. My publisher shared that with me. I'm like, yeah, movie time. Have not heard anything since then. So
This question for Brian. I'm just curious. Your first 3 books. Why 2005?
Great question. So the first book, Curse the Reaper, it's about an 80s franchise getting a remake, and I just looked back at my memory of that time of like 2003 was the Texas Chainsaw remake that I feel like really kind of kickstarted it, and I just honed in on that time, also thinking about what technology in terms of the internet and the fandom and what that looked like, and it seemed like the right time to do it. And then Candy Cane Kills I started writing, and originally I was writing it as present day. But that book, actually, like Library Journal, like said that it's like good for YA readers, which I love because it's kind of a step up from Goosebumps, because a lot of the characters in it are teenagers. It's like a family story, but there's a group of teens. And what I realized in writing modern day teens was like, well, I don't know if I know how to write modern day teens, but I know what teenagers in 2005 were talking about. So I actually, I was like, well, I could just stick with the consistency of like, then it's going to be 2005 again. And it was fun because then I could like have the emo kid referencing, My Chemical Romance and But it also, definitely helped with the technology element of like the cell phones of it all as well, which it's an annoying thing to have to reckon with in every horror book. It's the cell service.
It really is.
Brian, you don't want the Ohio Riz, right? Whatever that means. Whatever I just said.
You're younger than me, Patrick.
Hardly. So now is the time where our sudden comfort chairs become suddenly uncomfortable. They're very painful after about an hour, and we have got 4 books. So right behind you at the front desk is Chantal. She's got the 4 books. She is going to give them out to... So, Chantal, can you shout out the first title? Eternity's Blade. So these are all horror novels we're giving away that have not yet come out. So you guys are going to get something special. So Darcey, since you've come the farthest, can you give us a number between 1 and 40?
Yes. Let's say 32.
All right, 32. Excellent. You've won the book. Excellent. Chantal's going to bring it on over. All right. Brian, your turn.
29.
Chantal, what's the book? Witch of the Wolves. All right. Excellent. Darcey, next number.
Number 9.
Number 9. All right. What book are we getting? We're getting Body of Water.
Oh.
And finally, the last one, Brian.
Let's go with 12.
Bochica.
Hey.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, for those of you online, thank you so much for watching. Let's give a big round of applause to Darcey and Brian. Now, unfortunately, is the time that we're going to make you work a little bit before you get your book signed. If you could please put your chair right up against where the cookbooks are, that'd be really helpful. And then go ahead and get in line according to your ticket number. Make friends.